to Mr. Grimes'
Mr. Grimes,
case.
Yes.
We made findings of offences against vote leave which were related to common plan, working together over spending the limit, which Mr. Grimes was part of, though he didn't personally commit an offence. And as you correctly allude to, we also took the view that the way Mr. Grimes registered or didn't register created some offences. And the County Court have found in favour of Mr. Grimes on that at this stage. I should be clear, those proceedings are not complete. We are waiting for the judge's written judgment. Everyone will want to read that carefully and understand what he said. I want to make that clear, not particularly in the sense of Mr. Grimes personally. I have great empathy for anyone who's investigated, but in the sense of what it does to the law and whether that works the law or whether the appeal court should look at that. So I'm just being cautious in those proceedings because they're not in that sense completed. The vote leave findings, the offences, and Mr. Grimes were one thing as such. Vote leave, as been said, for their own reasons, whatever, withdrew their appeal and paid their fines, which is about the overspending breaches. So these were the things, as it were, left over with, in fact, I can put it that way, sounds like we're putting it, with Mr. Grimes, which is what the County Court case was about. But we're waiting to read the judgment.
What did that cost you? Because, I mean, you have a budget of about £16 million a year as an organisation. I mean, there's straws in the wind. It might have cost £500,000, which is quite a lump of your annual budget just to pursue a 22-year-old. It seemed a bizarre amount of money.
Well, I'll come back to what it costs. Let's be clear. Anyone who campaigns in a referendum, these are major public events. He was campaigning. He did spend a lot of money on campaigning. He didn't break the current County Court view didn't break the law, and I respect that fully. But let's not, whether you're 22-year-old or whatever,
oh, no, he's over the age of majority.
You're participating,
yes.
And you must respect the rules. And the County Court was satisfied he did. So I don't think it would be a reason for us not to properly investigate our concerns about 20-year-old. But we must investigate fairly and properly. Those must be right decisions. There's been misreporting on the spend, on the legal cost spend. The figure of 400,000 roughly, which has been in the media I've seen, what that relates to, of course, is the spending on the vote leave matter, which Mr. Grimes' case was part of, because it was his appeal was joined with theirs. That's the figure that was spent there. And, of course, we've already got back from costs on that for about £200,000 because they withdrew the action to pay our costs, and those proceedings, there may be a bit more to come yet. So what one is left with is what were the costs on the element of that were the Mr. Grimes element that we spent. That's currently being considered by the judge. He's asked for both parties, you may know this, Mr. Kinley, to give details. We're looking at what we've spent, but he's looking at what his costs are. So we will know that in due course.
You say it's not an end yet because we're waiting the written judgment. Will you perhaps put an end to the taxpayers' suffering and say you won't be appealing that this afternoon?
No, it's very important for all regulatory bodies. I mean, whether you win or lose a case, it's very important you look at the judgment carefully and think of the implications. That's in the public interest, in the voters' interest. This is in the court system. There are court judgments, and we all know it. Sometimes a higher court says no, a lower court got it wrong. One shouldn't take things to appeal unless there's a good reason for it, particularly on spending public money. We absolutely respect that. So we will read the judgment when the judge issues it. We will think it carefully. We will be looking at whether it raises implications in the wider sense for campaigners about how the rules work. And if we come to a view it would help everyone for a higher court to consider that before the matter is concluded, we would appeal it. If not, we won't.
Right. If I can just
one more quickly.
Yes.
I will. Mr. Cosney, you said earlier on that any participant in referendums, they need a period of time to understand the rules. And also, I think, after Mr. McFadden's comments, you said that your powers are insufficient. You'd like more. Do you think it's fair to say that, having lost that court case last week, having never published guidance on which you had to go to the Supreme Court in my case last year, do you think you really should have more powers? My view is you should perhaps be having rather less. And I've heard the comment many times by many people that the Electoral Commission is not fit for purpose, and I'm really starting to think that has some truth to it. I'm sorry.
Okay, well, if I may comment, the important thing is to step back on the system as a whole. So the Electoral Commission's role is around elections, having fair elections, and our elections in the UK are run well and good, and that's a success story we should all celebrate, and that applies to a number of factors and a number of players in that campaign, as parties, compliance, the Electoral Commission's role, good guidance, which I think we do issue, and then there's the other aspect, which is the political finance rules, the regulation, where it's the police's responsibility on criminal matters, which is what you're referring to as the South Fenwick case, not the Commission's responsibility, and we have a regulated civil sanctions regime. On the civil sanctions regime, it's important to remember that by and large there is major compliance. We've carried out, I should say, about 450 investigations over the last 2 or 3 years. In virtually every case, the fine's been paid and the result accepted. Some of them has been actually not so much a fine, but getting people to comply, which is what the rules are about. Mr Grimes' case is the first case we've had with any of our fines overturned in court. There won't be a regulator ever, it won't happen to us ever, where you win every case and you get